Hi everyone, this is Jared, AC7WH, Backyard Ham Radio, and this is a video that I was not expecting to make until yesterday. So I had a fantastic contact on 40 meters, and I was attempting to make another contact with a ham in the Cayman Islands, and then all of a sudden I noticed that I was getting some unusual errors on my LA-1K amplifier from Palstar, and then all of a sudden I had, as far as I could tell, zero amplification. I tried all sorts of settings, like turning down the power even further than the normal 30 to 40% on my ICOM IC7300, and I tried power cycling my amplifier and even unplugging it, waiting multiple minutes and plugging it back in and then turning it on, and nothing seemed to help. I tried multiple bands, the 40 meter band, the 10 meter band specifically, and I tried checking out the settings. Everything else seemed great, more or less, but I'll show you what's going on. So let's power this on. Okay, so I'll start by mentioning that right now I have my ICOM IC7300 set to 7.230. By the way, hear this? That's the sound of some birdies I've been noticing, especially over the past few months or so. Maybe a bit more than that. I used to notice them, I believe, primarily on the 6 meter band, but now I seem to notice them whenever I would be using the amplifier, especially when I first turn it on. So I have a feeling there's something going on with the power supply. I believe I read that supposedly some of the earlier models of the LA-1K had power supply issues and needed additional filtering, and the later models, like this one that I just purchased almost a year ago, the end of January of last year, that these should be better. But anyhow, one other thing, it's just off screen, but over in here, the switch for the power, I notice, has the neon light flickering, and that sounds like or looks like a sign, sorry, of it going out that way for just the neon lamp, but that's not too concerning. All right, let me show you what's going on with the amplifier. All right, so this should be right about 30 watts, give or take, because the 7300 ICOM is set to 30%. I know it's not going to be exact, but it should be in that ballpark. Okay, running into a dummy load here. Here we go. This is Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel. Testing, checking, testing. I can see right now that it's just over 20 watts. Checking, testing, maybe touching 30. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel. Test, test, check, check, check. My mouth is close to the microphone, using zero compression, just like last night. Check, check, check. Test, test, test. Checking, testing. Check, check, check. All right, so as you could see, even with a loud voice, I was just barely touching 30 watts according to the indicator here. Okay, nothing unusual there. We're tracking the frequency. Temperature's looking great, nice and cool at 24 degrees Celsius. Voltage draw 50 volts. Current right now is at 0.1. For the amps, let's check that out again for a moment. Checking, testing, checking, test, test, test. Looking at the current draw, check, check, check. Holding steady at 0.1 for the current draw. Check, check, check. Temperature at 24, SWR at 1.0 or 1.1 to 1. Not bad. All right, transmit is bypassed because I have this in standby mode. Okay, let's go ahead and try this on operate mode. Oh, here's another birdie. All right, so something weird is going on there. I don't think that I should be hearing that so much, but maybe you have noticed otherwise. Feel free to comment. I can use all the help I can get. Okay, so back to what I was doing. Let's go to operate. Okay, so for operate mode, let's see what happens. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel testing checking. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel testing check testing. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel. You will notice that the current draw is about 8.9 at the highest. Check test 8.0 3.0. SWR is holding steady between about a 1.1 and 1.2. I guess that's not steady, but close enough. And I am seeing the temperature rise by 1 degree to 25 degrees Celsius. Current draw is now touching 10.5, 9.7. Nothing too unusual here. Temperature is now up to 26 Celsius, nothing crazy. And I'm looking here at the voltage draw staying steady at 50. But you will notice here, check. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel, check. Instead of this registering about 600 to 800 watts like it normally would with this kind of drive power, I am only registering about 100 or so. I'm looking at my HF auto and it is showing 59, 45, 26, somewhere in there. And I even have another watt meter with the dummy load, and that is registering the highest of the three, but even that is showing about 150 to 250 thereabouts. So that I would not trust as much as the Palstar equipment, but even then that is well below what I would expect to see here. I have the MFJ watt meter actually set to the low setting. If I was running the full amplification the way this should have been working with the LA-1K, then I would have this MFJ dummy load watt meter on the high setting. All right, I'm going to stop transmitting into the dummy load. Okay, so one other thing. I heard the relay on the LA-1K. Relay seems to be working. I will note that I have noticed a blip across the screen on my waterfall on the ICOM IC7300 from time to time in recent weeks and months, where it made me wonder, okay, what's going on? Why am I seeing this strong blip across the waterfall when I stop transmitting? I guess primarily over the past month or so. But a number of things have me concerned here. Obviously, I'm not getting the transmit power like I used to. Now, I was seeing some errors come across. And I'm going to look in the troubleshooting here. So this is the troubleshooting section of the manual. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, without me changing any settings, I received a TX overdrive message, and it says in the manual, this displays when the drive level exceeds approximately 60 watts. Now, with the ALC set to the -4 on the main screen, and if I go here to the menu and I look at the ALC base value, it's 350 on the amplifier. And I have no compression set up on the ICOM IC7300. I had not been having much of an issue with any kind of overdrive with this recently with those settings. So that was unusual in and of itself. And Also, I got a bypass plus VD, which is the voltage draw error. And the manual says the LA-1K is in bypass to protect from loss of plus 50 volts drain voltage supply. The fault should clear in a few seconds. It did not clear. This can occur when operating on 120 volts if the drain current ID, which is this here, exceeds 32 amps. So when it was working properly last night, the highest reading I saw was a 26.2 amp draw. So that's up there because I only use 120 volts for the power outlet. I don't have a nearby 220 volt socket, but that's still not at 32 or above for the amperage. Also, it was tending to be more like 15 to 20 or 25. So the 26.2 was just the highest peak that I saw. It was generally much lower than that. And in fact, at the lulls in my voice, it was more like 5 amps, 10, 15 amps, that kind of thing. So I was looking at the manual here, trying to figure out what might be going on. Of course, you'll see the solution to switch the supply voltage to 240. Well, I am not near a 240 volt or 220 volt outlet right now. And this was working fine for the nearly 1 year that I have owned it, as far as with 120 volts. As far as I know, it was great, as long as I had a socket that could power it. And I don't like to run this at its maximum. I aim for about 800 watts, even though it's rated at 1,000. So I try to run it, you know, within reason there. Anyhow, let's look at a couple other things really quickly. So I'm going to do some transmitting here again. Let's look at some things. All right, checking, testing into the dummy load. All right, so on the LA-1K, I am getting a reading of around a 1.1 to 1 SWR, and I am getting a power wattage of a little over 20, so maybe 30 at the peak. Let's go ahead and check some of my other equipment. Okay, so it's pretty bright there, so it's hard to see, but the power is at 30. I'm going to set the mic down for a moment and see if I can make that look a little bit more viewable. Okay, so that's at 30 for the RF power, 30%. Again, I know it's not going to be exact, but it should be at least close. Okay, so here is my HF auto. You can tell I like Palstar equipment. I just want it to work correctly. Okay, so let's go ahead and try a little bit of a transmission here. Let's see what it's reading here for my power. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel, check, check, check. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel, testing, checking. Power peak is 20, 20, check, 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 check. Alpha Charlie 7 Whiskey Hotel, I saw it peak to 24, 25, 25. That's at 30% power on the ICOM IC7300. So you can see that with these settings, like I was using last night, that this should be totally fine with the power drive for the amplifier. I'm not driving it with over 60 watts. And I saw this peak to like 29. So nothing crazy, nothing too far out there. Let's take a look at my MFJ dummy load, even though it is not a digital item and I don't trust its accuracy as much right now. Let's just see what it says as a comparison. Okay, so this is with the dummy load on the low setting. All right, let's see what it's going to do here. Checking, testing, check, check, check. This is with it set to show me the peak power, check, check, check. So you'll see how I have the setting so that the needle is not just wildly moving. It will try to hold the highest peak. Okay, transmitting again. Check, 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 check. So right there is right around 30. It's blipping up to maybe 35, but even then, with this, I don't trust it as much. It's still being pretty similar to the other items, the HF Auto and the LA-1K. Check, 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 check. Okay, blipping up to about 40 when I really go for it. Check, 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 testing, checking, test, 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 checking, 50. Okay, that's a little bit higher. Check, 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 but I'm seeing 18, 6, 22, 28 on the HF Auto. So even this, with that power peak there, is less than the 60 watts for the amplifier. But again, this is the watt meter that I trust the least. So check, 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 check. If I look over here, check, 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 test, test, check, 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 testing, checking. So I would say that I would trust the Palstar items more than the MFJ, but even if the MFJ was correct, it's still less than 60. Okay, so I'm going to try the next stage. This is going to be with the LA-1K set to operate. Let's see what it shows here this time. Okay, I should be expecting to see here about 600 to 800 watts. Check, 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 testing, checking, 1, 2, 3, checking. I'm getting about 100. So at first, when I had this happen last night, I thought that I was not getting any amplification, but in actuality, it's basically giving me about 3 times the power rating that I had been getting, instead of it giving me more like 20 times the input power. So it's getting some kind of power there. It is drawing more current, but it's certainly not doing what it had been doing before. Let's take a look at my other equipment. Right then, when I let off on the power, I heard a click sound coming out of the microphone on my IC7300, I believe, but it could have also just been the relay of the amplifier. Checking, checking, testing, check, check, check. All right, testing. This is with the operate mode on. You'll see it is hitting, okay, 84 is the highest. Check, 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 check. Testing, checking. Yeah, see, it is not doing much amplification. You can see it hanging way down in there, 71, 55, so not much at all. And let's take a look at the MFJ. That time I'm almost certain I heard the little click through the speaker on the 7300. Okay, so let's take a look here. You're going to see this blip up higher, over 100. But again, this is the MFJ that I trust a little less. Checking, checking, test, test, test. So it is over 100 there. Checking, testing, just peaked over 200, but it doesn't seem like it's all that accurate compared to the other watt meters. But even if it was, that's nowhere near the 600 or 800 that I should be getting. Test, test, check, check. Ooh, that was a bigger one, but still only a little over 250. So something's wrong. I'm not getting the power that I should be getting here. I am going to try this on the higher power mode for the dummy load. Let's see. Okay, check, 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 testing, check, 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 testing. Testing, check, 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 testing, check, 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 testing, checking, checking, test, test, test. So that's showing roughly 200 at max. Check, 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 testing, testing, just a hair over. But over here on this equipment, I am seeing 66, check, 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 testing, check, check, 42. So not much coming through there. And back to the HF Auto. Check, 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 test, test, checking, checking, test, test, test. Not much coming through there. All right. Well, thankfully, this is still under warranty. I am just under the 1 year mark, and it comes with a 1 year warranty. So we'll see what happens next. But thank you all for taking a look at this. Hopefully something good happens soon. And we'll see how everything works out. You'll see this light here. It's not that bad of a flicker. You can see it a little bit there, just a tiny little flicker going on. But Anyhow, those birdies that I heard, and then also the other symptoms that I described, something's unusual here. As you can see, there's no other errors showing up. No longer is the transmit overdrive or the voltage draw error coming across the screen. It's just simply not amplifying, other than a very few times of amplification, and the current draw is reflecting that. Not much current being drawn. Maybe more than I would expect with the little bit of amplification I'm getting. But in any case, thank you all for watching, and 73.